Hello and welcome to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we are going to discuss a film that we think might be underrated, underseen, or we just want to talk about it. I'm Josh and I'm joined as ever by my co-host Alice.
Hello Josh, how are we doing today?
I'm wonderful. I'm very excited because this is a Halloween special. Ooh. As indicated by that noise there.
Yes, be afraid.
And as promised last week, we're joined by a very special guest. Probably my favourite guest. Because it's the boss, the gaffer, the big cheese, Alice.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, other words for boss?
The big boss. No, you done them all.
The kahuna, big kahuna. Producer Abbey, welcome, a very warm welcome.
Thank you for letting me come out of the shadows and.
Well, normally we just lock you in a room and make you edit other episodes,
yeah,
but so as I said, it's a Halloween special. So. Ooh. As indicated by that noise there.
What was that? Who was that? Is someone there?
It's midnight as we record this. So we always start with a random question whenever we're joined by a guest. So I'll start with Alice.
Go on.
Alice, what scares you the most?
Oh, commitment.
Oh,
no, not
the
true.
Commitments.
The Commitments. Oh no, actually, that was a pretty good film. I think I might have said previously, like fish. I've got a bit of a weird thing about fish. The other thing is hot air balloons. And like the idea of being in a hot air balloon as opposed to a hot air balloon itself. So there's something quite terrifying, I think, of being suspended in the air at that height for such a long time. So like I can do a bungee jump, I can do a skydive, that's fine. But there's something just that freaks me the fuck out about a hot air balloon. I feel like if I ever went in one, like what if I went mad suddenly and threw myself over? Like, you just don't know, do you? So I find hot air balloons pretty scary. But yeah, hot air balloons and fish.
I was not expecting hot air balloons and fish.
Quite a mix.
Your worst nightmare would be maybe like some sushi in a hot air balloon.
Yeah, terrifying.
Like, that'd be the worst date that anyone could ever take you on.
What about yours, Josh? What spooks you out?
I don't know. Like some of the classics I'm not overly fond of. Heights, spiders, the dark, but yeah. I'm not like petrified of them. Mm-hmm. One thing I'm weirdly scared of, and I might have mentioned this before, is I have like a recurring dream where my teeth fall out.
Oh gosh,
which I'm sure a psychologist would look at and interpret. And I have Googled it, and apparently it's something to do with being afraid of losing someone or something. But for me, I had braces for like 10 years.
Oh, wow.
From being like sort of 6 or 7 to 16, 17.
Wow.
So I actually think it is literally a fear of my teeth falling out. I don't think it's anything to do with fear of losing someone.
Oh, yeah. Just the literal loss of it. I had something similar. So I have the dream where I've got so much chewing gum in my mouth that I have to kind of fist it out. So then I'm like grabbing this chewing gum. It's not stop. So I don't do chewing gum anymore at all. So that's another one. Chewing gum, fish, and hot air balloons. Keep them away from me.
I honestly thought then you were going to say, I have this recurring dream where I blow such a big chewing gum bubble it turns into a hot air balloon and I float away like up.
Well, thanks for that sleepless nights for weeks now.
So you really must hate Pixar then, because you got Up with hot air balloons, Finding Nemo with fish.
Finding Nemo did freak me out a little bit, actually.
Producer Abbey, what about you?
So mine are I've got really basic bitch fears. So spiders.
Yeah.
I hate spiders. I can now I'm an adult, I can just about cope with the little ones, the little bitty ones. But I just cannot cope with spiders. And heights. Probably similar to yours, Alice. There is that I don't want to throw myself off the edge in a moment of madness thing. But there is there is something quite physical about it. So we went up Liverpool Cathedral once, literally as we were going up and up and up, it's like you can feel the pressure change, and my body just froze, and it was like I physically cannot move, like I can't move, and then something has to kick in and go, well, no, bitch, you can't stay here, like
you can't stand here forever.
Have to go. But yeah, so there's just something about just that feeling, even if I watch it on films, like if I see someone on the side of a building on a film I get pins and needles in my feet.
Oh, wow.
It makes me feel sick. I hate it.
What
So
are you
probably
like
heights.
in an aeroplane?
I don't really like it. I'm not bothered about having a window seat because I want to pretend I'm not in the sky.
Ah, yes. I'm just in a regular car and we're driving to Spain.
A bus.
Yes. But then I hate takeoff because I hate that feeling. You can feel that you are getting higher.
Oh, definitely.
And it is the worst. So yeah, spiders and heights for me.
So if I was to arrange for us to record an episode in a hot air balloon above Liverpool Cathedral with some
sushi.
That was going to be the 100th episode. That's coming up.
I'll bring the spiders.
For God's sake. Okay, so let's move on to talking about this week's film. As I said, it's a Halloween special.
Ooh.
And
I don't know what's making that sound.
It's just in the background. It's just
what is it?
We shouldn't have recorded it whilst Abby was frozen in place in Liverpool Cathedral. It costs a £5 to get in. So, as I said last week, we've done a Halloween film, but it might not necessarily be one that people would think your usuals. You already know what it is because it's literally the title of this episode, so I don't know why I'm waffling on. But we are doing Addams Family Values from 1993, which is the second in the Addams Family films. Abby, you've picked this one. So, what's it about, and why did you pick it? Apart from the fact that it's Halloween and we asked you to come on.
Well, I actually think I would have picked it anyway because this is one of my favourite films. So, I'm gonna do this overview as though everybody knows kind of who the members of the Addams family are because I think everybody probably does. So I'm not going to introduce each character. Essentially, this film is a sequel to The Addams Family from 1991, and the film starts with Morticia giving birth to the third Addams child, Pubert.
Great name. Nothing funny about it. Pubert.
No, serious name.
And then having to hire a nanny. So her and Gomez need to hire a nanny to help them with the kids. And they hire Debbie, who's played by Joan Cusack. What they don't know is that Debbie is actually a serial killer who marries rich men for their money and then kills them off. So she starts to flirt with Uncle Fester. He starts to fall in love with her. When Wednesday starts to get suspicious, Debbie gets the kids shipped off to summer camp to get them out of the way. Her and Fester get married, but he will not die. So everything that she tries to do to kill him, he will not die.
Indestructible.
Exactly. So essentially the film culminates with Debbie has all of the Addams family strapped to electric chairs and she's about to kill them. And then baby Pubert comes along and saves the day and electrocutes Debbie instead.
Happily ever after.
It is dark. It is a dark film.
It is dark, and we'll come on to that. So why did you pick it? Apart from the fact that it's your favourite film, that one of your favourite films, why did you pick it? In terms of the podcast, I guess.
So this is a film I remember watching quite a lot as a kid. Not in a religiously watching it. It wasn't kind of like a family, a film we all watch as a family. It's just on telly a lot. It's one of those filler films that's always on telly, like between Christmas and New Year and that type of thing. And it's always stuck in my head. It's very funny. It's very quotable. It's quite dark. But when the first time I watched it again as an adult, as opposed to as a kid, it kind of struck me that this doesn't feel like it's got as much of a following as other kind of Halloween-y films. So you've got the likes of like Hocus Pocus that people go mad for every Halloween, and it's always brought up. But this doesn't seem to have that kind of following, and I feel like it should, because watching it again as an adult, I just think it's really funny. It's got a lot of jokes that are good for kids, and it's got jokes that are good for adults. I think it's like good for gifts. You could get some good memes out of this film. So I just don't know why you just don't see it around that much. So I just, out of interest, thought I'd have a little look at the ratings, obviously the ones that we use on the podcast. And I just thought they were a bit flat. Okay. So they're not terrible. And I don't think this is a perfect film, but I think it's kind of perfectly what it is. I don't think it could do what it's trying to do any better. So, yeah, I just think the ratings, I won't say what they are, but I think the ratings are just a bit flat. The other thing is that, as I mentioned, this is a sequel, and this is one of those really rare situations where a sequel is a much better film than the original. So the original Addams Family film is nowhere near as good as this one. But when I looked at the ratings, Addams Family Value, so the ratings that we use, so the IMDb and then the Rotten Tomatoes critics and audience scores, Addams Family Values scores less than the original Addams Family on 2 of those ratings, even though I think it is quite widely acknowledged that this is a much better film. So I think in that way it's underrated. It's probably not underseen because, like I say, it is on telly all the time, but I think it's underappreciated.
Okay, well, let's see. Alice, had you seen this one before?
I had seen this one, and like Abby's already said, I'd seen it many, many times. It's one of those, like, I feel like I saw it loads when I was a kid. I don't know if we had it on VHS. I feel like maybe we taped it off the telly, which is so illegal.
What label did your dad put on it?
Dark clothed family in Castle.
Gothic family.
Yeah. The goths next door. No, I think we actually knew. We actually knew this time. It was called the Addams Family Values. So yeah, I'd seen it loads, had very fond memories of it, had sort of really vivid memories of all the time that the kids spend in camp. I seem to remember that all being very funny. I remembered the look of it. I remember, obviously, there's so much gone into like the set design, the props and all this. I was interested to kind of realize this time around, though, it's not like set around Halloween. There's no actual like Halloween themes involved in it at all.
Thanksgiving, isn't it?
They're just, it's Thanksgiving. Well, it's summer though, isn't it? Because they're at summer camp.
Yeah.
But they're celebrating, or they're doing this like Thanksgiving play at camp. But there's no Halloween theme. They are just a not ordinary family, should we say, or unusual family in the way that they dress and the way they like to spend their time, and obviously the property that they live in. But yeah, really enjoyed it this time around. Hadn't seen it again as an adult. But yeah, really funny, so much fun. Morticia is just exquisite, and I love her relationship with Gomez. It's turning on the head, isn't it, this traditional idea that we're given of like the all-American family, especially kind of coming up in the 90s or whatever, where, you know, the husband might not be very nice to the wife, and the wife is always nagging the husband to do the dishes and do this and do that. But in this, obviously Morticia and Gomez are so in love and they fancy the pants off each other. And it's just a really nice relationship that they have. Wednesday Addams, so Christina Ricci, I just think is brilliant. Like I've said before how good I think she is, like she was in Casper, but she's one of the best child actors, I think, ever to come out of Hollywood. And Fester, and is it Joan Cusack, right? As Debbie. Yeah. And they're really funny together. And she, I think, was really, really good at this, at playing just a brilliant villain, but all dressed in white, which is again turning your expectations on their head, right? Usually the person who enters all in white is this angelic, virginal angel who's come to save the day. And it's like, no, she's the devil and she wants to kill everyone in your family. So I just enjoyed the way it played with all that. It just subverted your expectations. And I just think it was really, really fun for the kids and for adults as well. I think it's quite suitable for the whole family. What about you, Josh? I'm assuming you'd seen this one before?
Yeah, so I had seen it before. I remember. So I remember watching this as a kid, and actually, a kid, I mean, like 6 or something. And the ending really scaring me, because obviously, if you haven't seen it, the ending, Debbie dies, or does she? And her hand comes out of the grave, which is obviously a reference to Carrie, the Stephen King book and film, which I didn't know because I was 6, and I just remember it scared the absolute shit out of me. And that was, I'd never really gone back to it, but
because you were too traumatized.
Yeah, I was too scared. Yeah, I was just too scared. But Abby had mentioned it quite a lot, how much she loved it. So we ended up watching it again, and I could see everything that she liked about it. So I sort of had a renewed love of the film, a renewed enjoyment of the film. So having watched it again then, Abby, what are the things you like about it, as well as what Alice has already said?
So straight off the bat, initially, although it's probably quite a basic thing to say, I find this film hilarious. Like, it is gag. It doesn't stop. And because there's so many of them, every single time I watch it, there's something else that stands out to me that I'd not noticed before. And also, I think watching it as an adult compared to watching it as a kid, there's so many jokes, like you said, Alice, there's so many jokes in there actually that are for the adults. Like, often it actually feels a little bit to me like a film for adults that's got bits in for the kids, as opposed to a film for the kids, it's got bits in for the adults, because it's quite sexual at times, and it's got jokes in it that are not necessarily inappropriate for kids, but I just don't think certainly went over my head when I was a kid. So like the one that sticks in my head is when Gomez is talking to Fester about wanting him to have kids and have a family and know that love, and he says I want you to know the joy of having children and paying somebody else to raise them. I feel like that's a joke that as a kid that's just going to go well over your head. But it's kind of making a comment. It's not just a joke. There's an actual comment. So it's making a little dig in there as well. So yes, that for me, it just makes me laugh out loud every single time. Like you said, Alice, Christina Ricci is just amazing in this, and particularly compared to the first Addams Family. Obviously, she's very, very young in the first one, but she kind of comes into her own so much in this film. And the character herself, I just think is wonderful, and is a character that you don't see many girls portrayed in that way. She's such an antidote to. Oh, this sounds terrible, but she's such an antidote to like be kind. And I think that there's nothing wrong with being kind, but we really push that on girls, on little girls, not on boys, not on men. I think women and girls are kind of always made to feel like you've got to be nice, you can't take up space, you've got to give over for other people. I mean, even like I was looking for t-shirts the other week, just plain t-shirts to wear, and there is not a single brand of women's clothing that does not sell a t-shirt that says be kind. It's not on men's t-shirts, but it's all over women's t-shirts, and I hate it. I just hate it. There's nothing wrong with being kind, but we shouldn't be always telling little girls, actually, you've always got to be kind to other people. You've always got to give stuff up. And I love that she is so confident in herself, and she sticks up for herself, and she kind of gives people what for. She doesn't she's not the bigger person. She gets her revenge on people that aren't very nice to her, and I just like seeing that presentation of a girl. And I think if I had daughters, I'd want them to watch that and be like, don't murder your baby brother.
But that's too far.
but she's also I suppose that the main example in the film is that she is the absolute antithesis and opposite of all the other girls in the summer camp.
Yeah.
So like they're all like very prim and proper and privileged. Well, she's privileged as well, but they're all a certain way, and they do a very good job of all those girls look the same.
Yeah, like they're all blonde.
They're all blonde. They're all white.
Mm-hmm.
They're all even just look the same in their general features and stuff. And so you are absolutely agree with that. She is a really great character in this. She's also in Casper, which we did as well, isn't she?
Yeah.
She's the kids' horror fantasy queen, isn't she? Yeah.
Because she does deadpan so brilliantly, and I think that's a great feat for a kid. Because it's like, how do you tell a kid, like, can you be deadpan? And they're like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, no, can you just like embody, like misery and discontent? And not always that straightforward, even for adults. And I just think she does a great job at that.
I think the bit that I think she's really brilliant is when they come out with is it the Happy Hut? Or is it called Happy Hut?
Where they get like brainwashed.
And she comes out of the hut and she tries to smile. And I feel like for a kid, that's a really kind of complicated sort of emotion that you're trying to show, which is like she's somebody who kind of can't smile, trying to smile, except you find out later on that it's a show and she's doing it to kind of get them on side so that she can do a big finale. But that whole bit where the camera's just on her face for ages while she does this like creepy smile, and I feel like that is like how her performance is so good, just like in that section.
So what else then? What else do we think? Do you find it as funny as Abby did, Alice?
I certainly found it funny, and like you say, it's a lot of gags, it's a lot of wordplay, it's a lot of puns, and a lot of misdirection, and misdirection is always funny. And that does tie in quite well, actually, to the sort of misdirection as them as a family. It's like, because you'd walk past that house, or maybe you'd see Wednesday and Pudsey? Pugsley, not Pudsey, that's the big yellow bear. And you'd see them and you'd think like, oh, your sort of conditioned expectations for what society, deems appropriate or whatever might make you think like, oh God, what are they doing in that house? Like, look at their weird uncle and their weird hairy cousin and whatever. But they've actually got this really, really happy, like wholesome life in their house. Although Wednesday does bully Pugsley a little bit, doesn't she? And she does try to kill the baby.
Yeah.
She is a menace to society, isn't she? And all that stuff that she does in the camp is just so funny. And the camp, the guys who run the camp and stuff, it's all this very like saccharine, like fake niceness, isn't it? And she's just there to like light a fire under it all. And she literally does that. Yeah, I think she's great. She was the definite standout for me. What about you, Josh? What are some of the things that you really liked about this one?
Well, a lot. I agree pretty much with everything you guys have already said. I mean, it's so funny. There's so many different types of comedy in it. You know, there's slapstick. There's a lot of stuff with the baby. That's slapstick when they're trying to kill the baby. A lot of grotesque stuff, like with the family themselves. A lot of really great one-liners, like you've already said, Abby. So there's like things like Debbie says to Morticia, you know, where do you find these Addams men? And she just goes, it has to be damp. And it's just like, it's such a funny, it's such a stupid joke. Or there's a bit where they get to the summer camp and one of the kids has skipped 2 grades at school and he says something like, you know, Billy or whatever has skipped 2 grades. What about your son? About Pugsley? And goes, probation. I just think it's like you say, it's puns, it's one-liners, it's loads of different things. I like that it does make sort of quite a subtle point at the summer camp, because when we were watching it, I realised that all the kids seem to be pretty much blonde and white. So there's that sort of Aryan weird undertone. And then all the other kids who don't want to get involved are not white and blonde. Like some of them are white, but what I mean is they're not that Aryan idea of perfection. So there is a lot of different things in there, like a series. It's almost like there's bits that are like series of sketches, you know, when they're trying to find the nanny. And there's just that thing of like all the different nannies having their interview with the kids, or when Debbie's trying to kill Fester and she's trying all the different ways of killing him. I think one thing I do want to touch on actually is I think it is impeccably well cast.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there is a person in the film who feels like they don't belong either in the film or in the family itself. Christina Ricci was probably the standout for me as Wednesday, but I do also, you know, love Raul Julia, Angelica Houston. I think Christopher Lloyd, who plays Fester, obviously most people know him for Back to the Future, is one of the most underrated actors around, or certainly of this period, because within 10 years he did Back to the Future, all 3 of them, Roger Rabbit, and the 2 Addams Family films that he's in. And he just always looks like he's giving it everything.
Yeah.
Always looks like he's actually going for it.
It's not an easy, because Fester as well, like he's so physical and he's so weird looking and he's always doing so much, like with his mouth and with his eyes. Like it looks exhausting. I
did read as well, and I don't know if this is true, but I did read he had to crouch down the whole time he played.
Because he's hunched.
He's got his
so he's actually crouched, because obviously he's got his big coat on through the whole thing, so he's crouched down under his coat.
That's gonna ruin your legs, isn't it, man?
Let's give him an Oscar.
Yeah.
Christopher Lloyd for this. I also think it looks great as well. It can't be easy to adapt. So obviously the Addams Family started as a comic strip which Charles Addams wrote about his own family. And then they made a cartoon of it, which I think is where most people know because of the da-da-da-dun. Yeah, and all that. And it can't be easy to adapt. You know, there's many examples through film history of adapting comic books or cartoons and it being a bit shit. Like a lot of people don't like things like the Flintstones or, you know, other stuff like that. But I think it does a really good job in this, probably because the text itself is so easily translatable, because it is a little bit different. A lot of cartoons are really colourful, aren't they? So when you make a film out of them, what they do is they almost don't interpret it. They just go, let's make it exactly the same as it is in a cartoon. And then you get that weird thing where everything sort of doesn't look real. A bit like something like the Flintstones, or even like if you think maybe like something like the Cat in the Hat or something like that. Whereas this, I think it just works. It looks amazing. The set design, the props, the costumes, everything. I just think it's a great film.
Got a shout out to the lighting guy as well. So I don't know if you noticed, but obviously Morticia's eyes most of the time are lit as Dracula's were in one of the 1930s films or something. So I like to think that it's kind of insinuated that she is a vampire and that's why they have to live the way they do. But yeah, lots of stuff going on with the lighting, with the props, with the set design. Always very busy, I think.
Yeah. The bit I really liked with that is when the baby gets sick, but then turns into this really beautiful like blonde, cute little baby.
Is his mustache gone?
But the whole bedroom changes. The whole nursery becomes like really bright, and I think it's blue. And it's on. Beforehand, it was like all like animals eating each other and big horrible bears and stuff. But I feel like you're so brought into that world, and you feel so much almost a part of that family that actually, even though that blonde baby is so cute and that room looks really sweet, it's really creepy. There's
Yeah,
something
yeah.
really, really creepy about it. So I feel like that's really, really clever use of set.
Yeah, you absorbed into their life and into their way of seeing things, and quite quickly as well. You quite quickly sort of come to terms with, oh, this is how they like things. This is what I get used to. So when you do see things like that, when all these girls at camp are being like so nice and sweet, it's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Would you like to be in the Addams Family?
Oh, definitely.
Would you?
That was pretty much me when I was a teenager. All black, massive black eyeliner. Yeah. Hated anything nice, anything pink.
But also, I actually think they're quite a nice family unit. They
Yeah.
actually do in a not even in a weird way. They actually really love each other and they look after each other. And I know you say like with Wednesday, you know, she's a bit horrible to Pugsley and she tries to kill the baby. But actually, I kind of think when it comes down to it, you know, she's the one who initially notices that something's probably not right with Uncle Fester and she's the most concerned about him. So I think when it comes down to it, they're actually a really like nice, strange family unit.
She almost has this kind of supernatural power, doesn't she? Because when I can't remember what happens in a scene with Fester and Debbie. It might be when he proposes to her and she says yes, but she wakes up, doesn't she, in the middle of the night and there's a lightning strike and it's almost like she can sense that something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the women in the family do have this other power, because I'm sure Morticia's a vampire. And then Wednesday's got like this weird psychic power and stuff.
So we'll move on to talking about things that because it's a Halloween special. Are you ready? Dispikes.
And you were telling me off for going, woo!
because dislikes.
No, bad.
Fine, well, let's talk about
delete the episode.
It's okay, I'll cut it out.
So I don't think there's going to be much, but Abby, is there anything you would change or that you didn't like about the film?
Not really. And it's one of those films that it feels a bit daft to criticise.
Yeah.
Because it's just daft. Like what else? I don't know what you could say, really. There is a couple of things because I felt like I should say something.
Okay.
The bit in the restaurant where Morticia and Gomez are dancing takes a dip for me. I just find that bit a bit long and a bit boring.
Quite long. It's quite long,
yeah,
isn't it?
So like a dip in pace, you mean?
Yeah, and it's feels like filler. It's the one bit of the film because I feel like it's fast paced. The jokes are fast paced. There's a few different actually lines of storyline going through it as well. But then for some reason in this bit it just kind of slows right down. And there's a couple of bits where, you know, they're doing flips and spins, but generally the dancing isn't really kind of good enough to want to sit and watch it for as long as it's on screen for. So that's just the one bit where it slows up a bit for me. Other than that, there's a couple of bits you notice watching it now where there's some special effects that are a bit naff. Bits that's supposed to be the baby and it's quite obviously like a really plasticky hand. It's supposed to be the baby's hand doing things. Or I think there's a bit where the baby's crawling and it looks like a robot baby crawling along the floor and little things. But again, it's from 1993. I can't criticise it. It was...
You can forgive it for that because of time sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't even feel like it needs forgiving. Like they did what they could, and we'll look back at films that are made now and see naff things in that as well. So, that was just kind of things that I noticed, but I wouldn't really criticise it.
What about you, Alice?
So a couple of things, again, that I noticed, but maybe wouldn't be sort of like proper criticism. So there's a lot of inferred knowledge. So you're not introduced properly to the characters in any way. And it does start in a way that assumes that you've already seen the first film. So I think if you hadn't seen the first film, or if you weren't familiar with this family already, you'd feel a bit like you were thrown in the deep end, and you'd be like, well, hang on, why is there old mad uncle living with them, or why is this happening, or why is that happening, or and then Morticia's just like pregnant suddenly, and then it's like bam, we're in the hospital, and it all kind of happens so quick that you don't really get a chance to kind of ground yourself and be like, right, where are we, what's going on? The other thing as well I just felt like the pace was a bit weird, just kind of all the way through the film. It felt like every joke and every sort of story thread was given equal amount of time, whereas there were some instances where I would have liked more time and maybe a bit more exposition. It's one of the very, very few instances where I feel like a bit more exposition would have actually been quite helpful. But there's one moment where they're sort of getting suspicious about what's going on between Debbie and Fester. So they all turn up at their house, at their new mansion, at this, gorgeous mansion that they've gone to live in because he's had to move out. They turn up, Gomez, Morticia, and the kids, and then they leave. And you don't see them traveling to the house. You don't see them traveling back from the house. And you don't really see what happens afterwards. And it just kind of felt a bit like I just wanted a bit more in between. And I wonder if there was a lot of shots and scenes and scenarios and that on the cutting room floor. And if it was a bit like, no, we need to keep this short. We've got an hour and a half. Get rid of this, get rid of that, get rid of that. So I feel like I could have done with a bit more sort of connective kind of storytelling, I suppose. It's like, well, how are we getting from here to there and how are we getting from here to there? And of course, the other thing as well is we're meant to feel sorry for Fester and all this, but he only fancies Debbie because she's hot. Like, he sees her and he's like, oh, I'm in love with her. He hasn't said 2 words to her. It's because she looks great. That's it. And then we're meant to feel sorry for him. It's like, oh, turns out she's a Black Widow and she's going to kill me.
Uncle Fester is cancelled.
Yeah. So then it's just kind of like, well, you kind of asking for this. Do you know what I mean? It's like this young, hot, beautiful blonde who you'd never spoken to, you have nothing in common with. And, you're just like, bam, no, I'm in love with her. And it's like, well, more for you, old man.
See, that is one of the, because I was thinking about the Debbie character as well, that she's a bit of a stereotype, isn't she? It's like, oh, it's another woman being portrayed as a gold digger and whatever. But I think I kind of forgave it for that because it's so cartoony. So I think similarly with the kind of, him falling in love with her, it's a very cartoony way of falling in love, isn't it? It's like a very childish way of falling in love. It almost feels like you pick, again, it's another thing of watching it as an adult, because I think when you're a kid, that makes complete sense. So that's how you would fall in love with someone.
Arrow sort of thing.
You see someone and that's it. Yeah.
But there's definitely a lot of that in it. Those kind of very like stereotypes and sort of childish ways of having relationships in a way.
They want to make it sort of easy to understand, easy to follow. This person likes this person or this person doesn't like this person. Because you've got those two in the restaurant because they've gone on this double date, haven't they? Like you said, when Morticia and Gomez were dancing for all that time. And they go out into a graveyard and Debbie's all like, I feel like you don't like me, Fester, or whatever. And it's like, you haven't said 2 words to each other. He can't decide if he likes you or not because he doesn't know you. And it was just kind of that sort of like superficial kind of relationships. But yeah, like you say, it's meant to be a family film and it needs to be appealing and understandable for children as well. So we can't waste too much time kind of, diving into, what she likes and what he likes and why they might be a good fit or whatever. But I just feel like she doesn't really deceive him because he doesn't get to know her at all before marrying her.
Other than the fact that she knows she's going to kill him.
Yeah. Apart from that. But like, it's not like she pretends, how you see in some other films, like the woman or the man will pretend to like certain things or pretend they've been here or they've got this job or whatever. She doesn't do any of that. He just sees her and then straight away he's like, will you marry me? And she's like, yes. But I'll let him off. Because it is a funny film. But it didn't ruin it for me. Like, these weren't things that kind of made me think, oh, God, never again. Just the things I noticed. Why? What about you, Josh? Anything for you?
I agree with some of the points you've made to an extent. I did notice a little bit of the issue with the pacing. It almost felt like they needed to get from A to Z. And they it was almost like, not paint by numbers, because that sounds like it's not good. It's very good. It is very formulaic in a good way. But it's like they go from scene to scene. And like you said, there's not always an exploration of how they've got there, so you do miss a little bit. Maybe that's because it's more basic, because it is a family film. I'm not too sure, but I did notice that little bit of pacing. So I think there's an argument that could be made, for example, sort of to combine your 2 points, in that it's a little bit too similar formulaically and plot-wise to the first one. There's an extended dance sequence in the first one where Fester and Gomez dance. There's an extended dance, and it's almost like they've gone, well, what worked in the first one? Just do it again. And if you notice, first one's made in 1991, second one's made in 1993. It must have been that thing of, first one was successful, get a sequel out quickly.
Time for a
get
sequel.
It out quickly. What worked in the first one, sort of thing. But I still enjoyed it, so it didn't really take anything didn't really take anything away for me. But the one thing I will say that I didn't like is this film has probably, of all the films we've done, the worst song over the end credits I have ever heard.
Well, it was a huge kind of leap, wasn't it? Because we were thinking that, because I watched this with my other half and we were watching it and it got to the end and he was like, Oh,
yeah,
that
I was
doesn't
like,
really.
I don't
fit.
remember this.
I just wanted more.
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
I just wanted more of that for like the 5-10 minute credits. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was all the whole end credits. I don't know if you watched the whole thing, but there was a couple of songs, and it was just a bit like, this is so weird. Like this doesn't match anything that I've just seen.
That's so indicative of what's popular
What
in
are the kids
1992 and 3. So let's move on to talking about the critical reception then and box office figures and see if we can make a decision about whether Addams Family Values for the Halloween special is underrated or underseen.
Josh, can you hear it? Okay.
Abby, you've already alluded to how that you know how it did. So Alice, based on what we've talked about, how do you think it did?
So going into this, I would have thought that it had done quite well. Just because, like you say, I remember it being one of them films that was on the telly a lot. So I feel like a lot of people would have seen it. And because it does kind of straddle the line quite nicely between sort of family film and, kids film for adults. So, but now you're saying that you think it's underrated. So then I think, oh, maybe I need to sort of rein my guess in a little bit or whatever. I would have put it, personally, like definitely within the 7s. Probably wouldn't cross the line into an 8 for me. But then I wonder if it got lower. So because you've picked it as potentially an underrated, I'm going to say that it got 6.8 maybe. So like 68 Rotten Tomatoes, 6.8 IMDb.
So roughly the late 60s.
A low, under the 7s, but nearly there.
Okay. And you know how it did, Abby.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so according to Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, so at the time of recording, IMDb gives it 6.8 out of 10. Spot on there, Alice.
Good thing I checked before we recorded. No, I would never.
Well, but Rotten Tomatoes, the audience give it 63%, so not a million miles away from the IMDb.
That surprises me.
But the critics give it 77%. So pretty well critically received. Then in terms of box office, according to Box Office Mojo, again, at the time of recording, it was made with a budget of about 45 to 50 million, and it made roughly 48 million worldwide. So it just made its money back roughly. So what do we think then? Let's start with underrated first. Abby, what do you think? Is that fair? Is it underrated?
Well, I think so, because of everything that I said before. I mean, I think 63%. I was so surprised at 63% from an audience. I just, like I say, it was one of those films I thought would be really popular with audiences and could be like a bit of a cult Halloween-y or Thanksgiving. Not that we really do that here, but just one of those films that just people really like, particularly from their childhood. So, obviously, the critics' score is quite good. I still think that's underrated. But it's fairly decent. But as I say, the original Addams Family film got 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb and got a 66% audience score. And although it's not huge differences, I just think it's a travesty that is better rated by audiences than Addams Family Values. So I still think it's underrated.
You think it's underrated, Alice?
I would say that critic score is what I would give it. So I would say that is appropriately rated. It's always a surprise when the critics give it more than the audience did. But yeah, surprised that the audience score is as low as it is, and surprised at the IMDb score as well, actually, even though that's what I predicted and guessed, because I'm just so good at this. I was surprised. Like, I thought it would at least crawl into the 7s.
So what would you have said if I hadn't said at the beginning that I'd already looked and thought it was underrated? What do you think your guess would have been?
I just said more like 7.7, like 7.8, like more up there. Okay. So for me, critic-wise, it's appropriately rated.
But if we average it out with all the scores,
so it goes a bit lower. So yeah, I would say it's underrated.
Yeah, and I'd agree with both of you. I think not hugely underrated, but I think it sits really nicely in that balance of family comedies. I think there's a real niche there for things like Hocus Pocus and this, which are like family films that you can watch on an occasion, but have things in it for everybody, because quite often studios lean more towards things like, I don't know, Hotel Transylvania or Minions or something like that, which isn't always something that appeals to everyone. But no, back to the point, I would completely completely agree. Let's slide it on into the Halloween shelf in the underrated vault, Alice.
The Halloween tomb.
The tomb. So there we go. Addams Family Values. Another one added to the underrated Halloween pile.
Tomb.
Sorry.
Crypt. Grave.
Normally, when we have guests on, we ask them what we can look out for, where we can find them. Obviously, mostly that is this podcast. Is there anywhere else where our listeners can find you, Producer Abbey?
No, thanks.
Yeah, mind your own business. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. We'll just move on to wrapping it up then. We will be back next week with another episode. If you'd like to get in touch with us in the meantime, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. If you've got your phone in your hand right now while you're on iTunes and you could skip on over and give us a 5-star rating or a little review on the iTunes app, that would be very much appreciated. Or we're on all the social medias. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Just search for Just Films and That or Just Films and That Pod and you'll find us. And the website is www.justfilmsandthatpod.com. Producer Abbey, thank you very much for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
Alice Oliver, thank you very much for joining me.
And thank you, Josh. Pleasure as always.
And it's goodbye from all three of us. Cheerio.
Bye.